And then, perceiving an uncommon drought and a disagreeable clamminess in my mouth, and using things to allay my thirst, but in vain, it came to me that when Jesus Christ cried out, "I thirst," his sufferings were near at an end. Upon which I thrust myself down on the bed, crying out, "I thirst, I thirst." Soon after this, I found and felt in myself that I was delivered from the burden that had so heavily oppressed me. Thus were the days of my mourning ended. Now did the Spirit of God take full possession of my soul.
We greet our friends everywhere with Chapter 5 of Apostle of Two Continents, the story of George Whitefield. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians and comes to you from the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.
I told you to get rest, and what did you do? Up and around, up and around. How do you ever expect to feel better?
I really am surprised at your behavior, George.
Putting the whole thing rather mildly, I'd say. I thought when I left last time you were getting some pretty good advice from the professor here. What happened? Think you knew better?
It isn't that. You see, John Wesley stopped by for a few minutes.
Him? I thought it was him and those like him that put you in bed.
It's hard to explain, but that isn't it at all.
Apparently you didn't meditate on what I said before I left George.
I can't accept what you told me, Professor Drew.
Young upstart. Why do young men like you get the idea you know more than their professors? In my day...
This isn't something that anyone knows more about than anyone else.
You seem to think you know more about God than most.
Well, you know what I mean.
I'm not sure I do.
What I'm trying to say is this. The man with the most education doesn't necessarily know more about God than anyone else. God reveals himself to whomever he will, and in such an intimate way as he is to convince that person, but no other. That's badly put.
Then you persist with this idea of a personal God?
I have to. I have no choice. God's spoken to me.
He's sicker than I thought.
George, try for just a minute or two to open your mind. I'd like at least to present another side to you.
I'm afraid it won't do a lot of good for you, sir.
A closed mind is never a good argument for your position, George. Not in any area, but especially not in matters of religion.
I will listen, but that's all I can promise.
That's all I ask. Let us look to men like Isaac Newton for a moment. What have the discoveries of men like Sir Isaac clearly indicated?
Order, laws.
Exactly. The universe, as we know it, is running according to certain laws. We're not aware of all of them as yet, but we do know enough to give us a good indication. Do you agree?
I must. These are facts.
Isn't it obvious, George, that the only logical place for God in what we can see to be the true nature of things is that of Creator? God started all of what we know on its way and established governing laws that perpetuate it. A truly marvelous accomplishment, I'd say.
I cannot as yet disagree.
God is a perfect watchmaker who has built a highly complex watch, the universe. Having wound it and started it on its design movement, he can now sit back, or, as Genesis puts it, rest. Any tampering, such as a medical or a change in answer to a plea from here, would be to admit that his perfect handiwork had flaws. To believe in medicals, George, is not to bring glory to the Creator, it's to insult him. A personally concerned God has no place in the perfection of the completed universe.
What you say carries much weight, Professor Drew. But where is the purpose in the universe? Why was it created in the first place? And what of me? Why was I created?
I believe only the Creator himself can answer those questions.
But you do believe that there is purpose in all this?
I believe that would be a logical assumption.
Then wouldn't it be just as logical to say that the universe is being run by laws of purpose?
I don't quite follow your thinking.
It's all nebulous to me, too, at this point. But what I mean is, if I purpose to do a thing and there are certain barriers in my way, I may change my plan of attack or vary it somewhat to meet these barriers. I will still act according to so-called natural laws, but I might run rather than walk, or jump over rather than pushing. Do you see what I'm driving at?
In a terribly vague way, I almost follow you.
I mean, couldn't a miracle, or for that matter any act of a personal God that interrupts the natural flow of events, couldn't this be a form of very natural acts consistent with the overall purpose of direction of the universe?
I'm always impressed with your mind, George. As to your question, I don't know. I don't think you know either. But I heartily encourage you to explore every aspect. And I shall do the same.
Are you two still at it?
Doctor, I thought you'd gone.
I've been doing a bit of checking on you, Whitfield. That's why I'm back. Is it true that you've completed 9 terms here at Oxford without a holiday?
Yes, sir.
During this time, you've abused your body pursuing this religious fanaticism?
That's over now, Doctor. You see, I've found what the apostle might call a better way.
The only better way you'll find is by following my orders. I'm sending you home, Whitfield.
I hear George is back home, right?
That's right, Gladys. They sent my boy home to recover from an illness he had at school.
He never struck me as being so sickly.
I've never understood him very well. He used to worry a lot over religious problems. I think that worry caused this trouble.
Well, being sent home from Oxford ought to teach him his lesson.
I'm not so certain. He's still very much taken up with these things. He told me yesterday that he reads the Bible while on his knees and prays over every verse.
What does he expect to get from all that? I mean, excluding calluses.
And the Lord make you to increase and abound in love, one toward another, and toward all men, even as we do toward you, to the end he may establish your hearts, unblameable in holiness before God, even our Father, at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ with all his saints. O God, thou dost seem to be saying that as one's love abounds, he's in a better position to be established unblameable in holiness before thee. What implications thou dost give to this love! One does not hate. One does not wrongly compete. One is not jealous. One does not avoid. One does not lust after another. One loves. And the Lord make you to increase and abound in love. O my God, do so to me.
George? George, are you up there?
Yes, Mother. What is it?
Do you know anything about this, here in the Gloucester Journal?
You mean that article by William Law?
It looks like an article by you, George. Your name is right here.
I did submit it, but Mr. Law wrote it. Actually, there are 5 more parts to it, to follow in subsequent issues.
But, George, this is an article condemning theatricals. I hardly think with the arrival of that touring theatre company that this is a proper time to publish anything of that sort.
What better time, Mother?
But you used to like the plays, George. I can remember when you used to cultivate that kind of friendship.
The only kind of friendship I care for at present is denied me. But no matter, God will raise companions in his good time.
Oh, George.
Well, I couldn't half believe me eyes, I couldn't. Right out there and back, in plain daylight. There he's got a little group of 'em, reading away at the Bible and praying and everything. It looked like a right enough little church society, it did.
Years ago, George thought he'd like to be a preacher. You know, like all children want at one time or another. But I thought he'd grown out of it.
He's acting mighty strange these days, ever since he's been up and out to bed. Visiting the poor section of town, spending time over at that jail.
I ask him to explain himself, but his answers are never very clear. He says that as his inner strength, whatever that is, as his inner strength increases, his sphere of action grows.
Sphere of action? What's that?
I think that's what he calls all the visiting and things that he does.
Where is he today?
That shouldn't be too hard to guess.
Church?
Church.
I can't get over it, George. Did you see the way Molly cried during the sermon? She must have been terribly moved.
I wouldn't be too hasty, Harry. Molly weeps almost every time she hears the name of God even mentioned. There's something of a sentimental attachment to religion in evidence these days. But it isn't the real thing. It isn't commitment to Christ. I'm afraid Molly and those like her need our prayers.
It must be all your education, George. You're so perceptive about these things.
One can learn much from studies or from behind the bar at an inn.
The bishop would like to see you if you have a few minutes.
George, the bishop!
What on earth could he want of me?
Shall I tell him you'll see him?
Yes, of course. I shall be there directly.
As you can see, Master Whitefield, I've had my eye on you for some time. Ever since you returned to Gloucester from Oxford, actually.
I'm flattered, Your Excellency.
It is indeed rare to see such zeal for God's work in one so young as yourself. I'm equally surprised at your convictions, having had most of a university education. The prevailing thought of the day is far from what we might term Christ-centered.
I know that, but God will not be silenced.
Now that I have told you that I am interested in your activities and motives, I shall tell you why. What I am about to say has not been decided hastily. I should like to ordain you into the Anglican Church.
Ordain?
I realize your position in this. You need not give an answer now. Only know that I shall be willing, on your request, to ordain you into the Church of England.
Oh, God, I cannot. I shall be puffed up with pride and fall into condemnation of the devil. I'm not fit to preach in thy great name. Send me not, Lord. Send me not yet.
And so we conclude Chapter 5 of Apostle of Two Continents, the story of George Whitefield. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, and comes to you from the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.